All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Perspectives webinar series. Today, we're talking all about the Future Ready HR, and today is National Dewey Decimal System Day for nerds like myself out there. And so, my question for you in the chat, where are you dialing in from, and what's your favorite section in the library? Would you head over to fantasy or nonfiction, or maybe the magazine rack or cooking section? Love to hear what part of the library would you like to frequent? Self-development from Sarah. Love that. You'd have company. I'd be right there with you. Fiction. Love it. At the cafe. VJ knows where it's at, especially this time of year. Get a little hot cocoa. Ooh, murder mystery sneaking in there. I suppose we still have a Dewey Decimal System. I don't think it works quite the same way that it used to. A lot of nonfiction, yeah. Bios. Always learn something from good biographies for sure. And if you're just joining, we're letting us know where we're dialing in from, and also recognizing that in honor of National Dewey Decimal System Day, we're sharing our favorite sections of the library for a quick minute while we give people a chance to join. Yep, baking and cooking. Yep. True crime. I always love learning about our audience through these random questions every month. Another self-help fan like myself, mystery. Yep. All right. Very cool. I don't know, Tracy, where would you be? Where would you hang out in the old library there?
Fiction.
Fiction, yeah. I've tried fiction before. Carrie, what do you think?
I would probably aim for anything leadership, either in biography or
Hmm,
otherwise.
pretty cool. Sophie?
I just got into some historical drama. It's a way of me
Oh,
learning history, but with a fun story.
so
Love
cool.
those
Love
too.
it. All right. Well, if everybody's had a chance to join now, I know we're always back-to-back meetings. I think 2 minutes is about what I like to hold. So I'm going to go ahead and get us kicked off here. Once again, welcome to the Perspectives webinar series. We love to do this for you every month. This time we're talking about Future Ready HR. We thought that December being what it is, we've already started to peek ahead, I would say, to 2026. And we've got bold predictions for you, 2026. My producer, Rachel, wanted to call it bald predictions. I thought that was hurtful. I don't know if you seem to think that was funny, but we're going to go ahead and share with you some bold predictions for 2026, not because they're going to be accurate. We're not so worried about that. But I think just trying to get our minds thinking to the future so we can be ready for what comes next. And we thought we'd have some fun with that today. So I'll be asking our panelists to weigh in on some of those different themes behind some of these predictions. So that's what we're going to do today. So before we get into it, though, however, we're going to go to the next slide, which is a little bit of housekeeping for us. Or I'm sorry, let me do the introductions first, and then we'll get to housekeeping. And I'll start with Carrie Higgins Bigelow. Carrie has been the founder and CEO of Living HR since 2009. She is a human who cares about humans and the purpose that work serves in our lives and in our society. Carrie and Living HR specialize in reimagining work to build inclusive cultures, talent optimized, and be capable of delivering on the business strategy and humanized experiences for everyone at work. Carrie, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thanks so much for having us. Really excited to be here. It's going to be a fun conversation.
Yes, it is. And next up, I will introduce Sophie Wade. Sophie is a workforce innovator, a work futurist, keynote speaker, instructor, author, and founder of FlexCell Network. Over 650,000 people have taken her LinkedIn courses on future of work skills, Gen Z, and empathy. And she's the author of Empathy Works, the key to competitive advantage in the new era of work. And she hosts the Transforming Work with Sophie Wade podcast. Sophie, great to see you.
Good to be here, Matt. And two, I'm really engaged, looking forward to this conversation too.
Very nice, very nice. And last, we have friend of the show, Tracy Spanenberg. Tracy is a global speaker, consultant, and advisor with nearly 3 decades of HR leadership experience. As former chief people officer at the Granite Group, she led transformational change through acquisitions, a pandemic, and complete technology modernization. And in 2024, she founded her boutique consulting firm, which is focused on distribution and manufacturing. Tracy, great to see you.
Thanks, Matt. Great to be here.
All right. Well, I won't hold us up too much before we get into our panel, but as I mentioned, a little bit of housekeeping. Yes, the webinar is being recorded and it will be emailed to you after. If you want to play back any of the amazing things that our panelists will say, you can check that out. We are going to have an audience Q&A section toward the end of the show. So if you have a question for our panelists, if they say something that sparks a thought for you, you're going to want to use the Q&A button in the Zoom to be able to get that question to us. The chat gets pretty fast and furious, so if you put something in the chat, we might see it. If you put it in Q&A button, we will see it. And you're going to want to stick around to the end because we're going to share with you contact information for our panelists, as well as some bonus resources, and we'll give you a preview of next month's webinar as well. Next up, we like to always kind of set the frame a little bit. And so when we're thinking about 2026 and what comes next, I thought this was a fun little image talking about how there's kind of two ways. I talk to HR leaders all the time, and there's two ways that we see this kind of going. You see on the left-hand side, kind of that doom and gloom a little bit more. There's a lot of scary things happening in the environment. I'm sure we'll get into some of those friction points. But also on the right-hand side, when you think about this opportunities that we have, and people are optimistic and hopeful about what comes next, new capabilities, maybe some green shoots out there too. So we're going to see how we feel about both sides of that equation as we look to the new year. But before we go too much further, I wanted to do something we always love to do, which is to hear from you, the audience. So we have a Menti poll. This is our online poll. And if you take your magic phone there, you can see the QR code, or you're going to see a link dropped into the chat as well that can get you straight to the Menti itself. And if you go to menti.com, you can type in those digits if you would like. But our first question for you, we want to examine some of the different forces that are going to have an impact. And so which force of the following will have the biggest impact on your workforce in 2026? I'll ask our panelists to weigh in on what we're seeing here on the screen. It's a combination of either AI automation, talent acquisition and redeployment, burnout and well-being, trust and psychological safety, or the ethical expectations of leaders. So quite a variety, a smorgasbord, some would say. And yeah, for our panelists, any surprise that AI and automation kind of leading the pack here, right alongside, almost neck and neck with burnout and well-being?
Hopefully one solves the other, right? If we do it right.
or causes the other, depending on how we do
Yeah,
it.
depending on how you look at it. I was taking
But the burnout first and then the solving. So hopefully
right.
Cats and dogs chasing each other in circles.
Right.
Very cool. Yeah. Well, you can keep those votes coming in. It looks like we got those two clear-cut winners. Let's see what didn't quite get as many votes. So ethical expectations of leaders. That's either they don't have them or maybe we're handling them better than before. One of the two. And then talent acquisition and redeployment. Yep, not quite really on par there with trust and psychological safety. So yeah, we tried to give you a good variety. It looks like you're taking advantage of that variety with a couple of clear-cut winners, or I should say clear-cut leaders of the polling here around AI and around burnout and well-being. Well, let's go to our next question, one more here. And this one's open-ended. It's what's one workplace shift do you know is coming, but you're most unprepared for? And remember, this is our anonymous poll here. So just curious about a shift that you know is happening in 2026, for example. You can see it on the horizon, but you don't feel like you're 100% prepared for it just yet. Succession planning, good one. More layoffs. Yep. AI, I think AI is very fair. Integrating into HR. Mass layoffs. Yep. Okay. Staff turnover. Sure. Brain rot being caused by AI. There you go. Yeah, relate to that.
A real thing. Mm-hmm.
Risks due to AI. So now we're connecting some dots here. Leadership training. That's something that's needed, but sometimes, not prepared for it. Yep. Compliance changes and retention challenges. Good stuff. Hard to fill entry-level positions. And if you talk to entry-level people, hard to find entry-level positions too. Kind of goes both ways there. New laws and regulations. Yeah, it seems like that all the time. Really good stuff. Let me just give one more quick second here. So new responsibilities, new promotions, leadership roles, people leadership training. Yeah, and increasingly, I'm sure these are topics that the reason that we love hearing from you is this helps our panelists kind of think in real time a little bit about what you're experiencing, what you're going through, and it might show up in some of our themes. So thanks so much for sharing those poll results. Really appreciate it. Well, I'm going to ask us to drop right into the panel here, and the way this is going to work, I'm going to drop a prediction. I'll just let you know what the prediction is. Again, not so much worried about accuracy, but just to kind of give us something to react to a little bit. And then I'll just open it up for the panel questions. And Sophie, I'm going to put you in the spotlight here for this first one to react.
Okay.
My prediction here is that employers, I'm hearing this thing about deconstructing jobs into skills. So jobs are kind of an outdated way. Now we want skills. And I think that's going to happen in 2026. But at the same time, workers are going to respond by freelancing their skills and selling them to multiple companies all at the same time. So no more of this one employer kind of thing. And what this sparks for me, Sophie, I'd love to get your take on this is, what are you seeing when it comes to that shift from moving past jobs into skills? And also, how does that kind of correlate or relate to worker loyalty, social agreements, anything else that might come to mind for you?
Well, yes, it's a big shift. It's a very interesting one. I think, technology has been really driving this push that, technology is moving so fast that the skills that we need for a job are changing so much so that it really becomes the job title becomes less relevant and the skills that we're using. So that's more where the drive is. So, each employee at every worker needs to really understand what their skills are. And right now, the freelancers actually know their skills much, much better than people within organizations. So that's a key thing that every single employee really needs to understand is what their skills are. And yes, I mean, there may be more that do tend to sort of think about using those skills in different ways. They can actually mitigate some of the risk by not having just one employer, but having many clients. That is something for them. So I do actually encourage employers to be more open about different employment arrangements and allow people to come in on freelance, so the blended workforce, which is going to be employees and non-employees and humans and non-humans. I mean, that's kind of like the blended workforce we're looking at. So I think the social contract we know has been broken for a while, but so there's a big shift in not just how work or jobs are changing, but the real focus on skills that I see, and I think it's it works both ways. It really works for both employers and the employees and workers. So it's an interesting shift, but we really need to understand our skills, and most people don't.
Yeah, and Carrie, I'm thinking about Sophie's comments also in the context of the Menti poll, where we saw so many with rifts or we're worried about turnover. Maybe it's almost like some of this restrictive job thinking might feel a little tight to the employees, or maybe we're not saying we're going to do less work, but we still are going to have a riff. And like, how do you reconcile some of these thoughts together?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because we don't do a good job in most employers of doing inventories of the skills and capabilities that we have. And
Right.
so without knowing those, it's very difficult to redeploy those resources or
Mm.
determine how to avoid a potential RIF or layoff. And so a lot of the work that we're seeing at Living HR is to do a lot of that skills inventorying to really understand the talent that we possess and how those skills also can translate into new skills and which ones can build from each other so that you can redeploy talent versus doing this big move to get people with all this institutional knowledge out of your organization. It's more of a what could we do if we had these people and how much can we accelerate our growth versus because we have these skills. And
Mm.
there's a lot of technology and advancement, I feel like, that's coming out, and we've had to cobble things together to be able to do this in HR. But it's really critical that people start to understand the true inventory of what we have from a capability perspective.
It's
Mm.
like we're holding on to some of these things, and at the same time, everything's moving and changing so fast. But employers and employees both hold on to this job context as either identity or a way of thinking about collections or buckets of pay. But Tracy, I know you've got this amazing experience when it comes to deskless workers in particular, and I just wonder if you're seeing something similar, or if you how you think about this notion about skills redefinition and how it relates to how people feel good about the work they do and valued for it.
Not surprised. I agree with Sophia and Carrie, and we are not ready. And we've been talking about skills in the world of HR for years, years and years. We've known this is the way we're moving. It is extraordinarily difficult unless you bring somebody like Carrie's team or you bring somebody like me in to help you with that because it just gets to the bottom of the list to categorize that. But I think what I try to do with my clients and when I speak, it's in this deskless space and distribution, manufacturing you have these skills, these, moving things from one place to another, driving a truck. You have these foundational skills, but you also have these knowledge-based skills. And you also have a very traditional work structure. And what I try to do is get clients and get people that I speak to think outside of that. So think outside of, and I think that along with yes, categorize the skills, but the first step is really to work on that mindset. Don't
Mm.
think that this job has to be done from 7 to 3, 7 to 4. What are the tasks? What are the skills needed? But what are the tasks within that job? Because there will come a day, and we'll talk more about Gen Z. I have 3 Gen Z kids who are building their lives on their lives and not around work. And so there will come a day, and it's happening for some people now, where people are like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. I'll work for you, but I'll work no more than 20 hours a week. And I'm great at what I do. And I want to do deskless job, but I don't want to do it the way you want me to do it. So I think it requires companies to really completely shift how we think about how work gets done.
I think it's going to be, there's going to be a lot of pain in this area because I feel like we're fighting history about how we've historically thought. So we have to break our mental models. We've got this social contract, which is already trying to rewrite a social contract when there's such low trust right now. Good luck.
Yeah.
And then, Sophie, you've had so much international experience. Now you think about the legalities of even trying to make a change into the status of workers in one country, much less in multiple countries. It's going to be really, really interesting to see how it evolves and somewhat thorny. But I'll move us forward to this next prediction. And let's take shift our attention away from sort of the construct of jobs and organizations, and let's think about the worker's experience. My prediction is this: jobs are going to start to resemble subscription plans. So when you think about being able to choose the experience you want, almost to choose your own adventure, do you want to have autonomy, or maybe do you want more coaching and feedback and development, or maybe you want rapid growth and promotion and that kind of succession? Pick one, and that's what you're going to get in your work experience here. So when you think about what's happening today in personalization, we can do it everywhere else. How come we can't do it with our work? But my question for you, the panelists, is how personalized should we think that work should be, really? And what sort of challenges does it inadvertently bring up if we start saying that employees are going to start having vastly different experiences? Who wants to take a crack at that one?
I'll take a crack at it.
Go ahead.
I think it should be extremely personalized. I mean, there are companies that are already have been crafting jobs around employees, specific to those particular employees, and then fitting in whether it might be freelancers with particular skills or other employees. Because if the bar has been raised, we're actually dealing with much, much more complex problems. We're having to work closely on teams. We're dealing with non-routine work because so much of the routine work has been automated away. So we need the most out of each person. So we need to know our skills. Every single person here says like, what does Tracy do best? How can I maximize everything so that she's doing the work that she's good at, so that she's, using all her top skills. So when we work on a project together, we need to be putting that together in the best way possible and having other people. So I think that having that personalized experience is really something that managers are tasked with. And it's, that is challenging because we haven't been looking at it like that. It's kind of like, what is the job, and sort of allocating it like it. So this is a big mindset shift in terms of thinking very much about personalization. And honestly, that is also what I think workers look at when they look at a company. They're looking at the values. They're looking at what that experience is. You say, we actually kind of are in that, subscription basis. Like, what are the values? What are what are good out of it? What kind of flexibilities this company give? And then I'm going to go and work for that company. So I think we have been going in that direction. And I think it actually, that's where I see the future of work as being a win-win, because when we do really match that up, the employer gets so much more out of the employee, and the employee has a much, much better experience.
Yeah, Carrie, I saw you were going to also weigh in a little bit here. What do you think what comes to mind for you when you think about the employee side of, should I be able to design my own work experience?
Yeah, it's funny. When I started living HR in 2009, we called it BYOO, and we still called it that, which is build your own opportunity. And, I think that's one of the things that drives people to think about their career as something that you navigate. And to your point around subscription, right when I think about that word subscription, I think about it like Netflix or Hulu, and people choose, kind of where their path is going. And they might go on a sprint at a period in their life that allows and affords them to be in that sprint phase, or they might be in a stability phase, or they might need flex schedule. And the way that this next generation is operating, like that becomes increasingly important, that we're creating those different opportunities and putting them in front of them for them to kind of choose their own adventure. And we have to get smarter, like Netflix does, around the recommendations of what else you could do, right? And
Right. Yeah.
that model to me is something that will take time, but it's critical for us to get to, because that's the supply and demand kind of working together. And right now it's really not.
So Tracy, I want to get your take on this, because let's say that as an HR professional, you're thinking about a manager who might have three different people who want three different things. One wants career progression, one wants coaching and feedback, one wants autonomy. Are our managers up to this task?
Maybe, maybe not. It depends on what we've done as organizations to help them gain the skills and the experience that they need to be able to handle that. But that is a job of a leader, right? So when I was in corporate, my team's purpose, the people team's purpose, was creating an incredible individual employee experience. And so again, we've been talking about this for a long time. AI, generative AI, makes this a lot. I don't want to say easier, makes this possible in a way that it wasn't before, right? And so
Right.
is the idea of a subscription model going to happen in 2026? Maybe some places. I created it for myself. Lots of people are creating it for themselves. It's a little bit harder, and I'm seeing a lot of just things going by in the chat. Well, this isn't going to work in manufacturing. This isn't going to work here. It's going to be harder, but flexibility is coming, and personalization is very, very possible. And that could mean simply giving feedback in a way that's acceptable to that person, asking them how, what their career means to them, having conversations. You can break it down to really simple things to make that experience personalized and start there. It doesn't have to be this big, scary thing, but personalization is great. And that's the way we're going.
Yeah, and I think these are, bold predictions for a reason. I think we're going to try to be provocative and push the
I
envelope a
love
little
it.
bit.
I love it. I
Yeah.
love this.
This next one, the next one might touch a nerve. How about this one? The 4-day work week will become common, right? And at the same time, the pressure to produce, though, is going to skyrocket and make even worse the types of burnout that we saw in our Menti poll earlier. Okay. So we got two things happening. One is, yay, 4-day work week. A lot of people like to talk about it. I'm saying it's going to actually become more commonplace than it is today. But at the same time, it's going to come with performance pressure, right? Pressure to produce that's actually going to be a detriment to the workforce. So if you see a lot of this, like how likely is this, but also like what is the nature of, if we offer flexibility, but it comes at a price, is it a price we're paying?
Well, the 4-day work week, before it gets implemented, they do a very rigorous analysis of the work people are doing and how they're going to do it, and they start doing the designing work. And this is the tough work that most organizations everywhere around the world have not done. So when they actually start designing and understanding and doing the workflows and doing the work processes and then putting in AI and other technologies to really sort out how best to do something, it actually allows people to do 5 days worth of previous work in that 4 days. That's why the 4-day work week does not change the salary that is paid. So I think, in fact, when we do that kind of really critical analysis of how work should be done, designing it and all that kind of stuff, it really is going to alleviate the possibility of burnout because you really understand what you're doing, how you're doing, where the pressure points are, what you can redesign, because we have to design flexibility into it now. So I think that rigorous process is something that is very, very welcome. And that's why I see, there was a bank in the UK that said that they really appreciated all of that process that went into it and really how that helped them sort of move forward with that 4-day work week, which they hadn't really been expecting. And I think as AI sort of changes the number of hours that you work every week, we've in the US, it has been, a standard 4-day or a 40 hour, maybe 55 or 60-hour work week. But you have the Netherlands, which has gone from 40 to 38. I think it's 32 now. And France is already contemplating going from 38, I think, to 35 or even lower because of AI, not paying anybody less, but just because if we have more, increased productivity, but we can actually have a shorter work week, not even using the 4-day work week. So I think there's some very interesting developments that are happening. And I'm very enthused about this process that we can put into it.
I've seen the other going the other way too. About 996 is coming back. We're working 9 to 9, 6 days a week. You're like, what is happening? Carrie, help me out here. How should I be thinking about this flexibility versus performance demands? We can't slow down per se when it comes to being productive, but do we have to just kind of be on this hamster wheel as much?
It's interesting. I think one of the activities that I think helps you get to the place where you can figure out whether a 4-day week is going to create that compressed burnout is the only way to get there is to figure out what work you can take out of the system, right? And there still has to be some sort of what we're going to stop doing and what we're going to automate and eliminate in order to be able to free up that capacity that could be time back that goes back to the workforce, which is what the workforce is asking for. But I think unless you've done that kind of process that Sophie's talking about, you you don't identify the busy work and then you still create the capacity drain and the energy issue. I think one thing that we don't do well at all right now across most organizations is actually look at capacity planning and really
Yes.
look at
Yeah.
what is the volume that somebody can withstand and then how do you adjust that capacity on a regular basis. In so that's challenging in certain industries for sure, but I don't think you can get to a 4-day work week unless you figure out what work you're taking out. If you're trying to compress and put all the same amount of work into 4 days, you just have more stress. It's not going to work.
Yeah, I think we've all experienced that before for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I don't know, Tracy, you thinking about this one too? It seems like a seesaw in some ways here.
Yeah, I don't know that I can add anything that wasn't
Yeah.
already said beautifully, but we did try that in my
Mhm.
last company and it wasn't effective. It wasn't that first of all people wanted to do. We tested it as you should do before you roll something out widely, and it didn't work for either our people or for the company. What we
Mhm.
did do then was build in flexibility where we could. So this person could have this for 10,
Mm.
this for, and not adopt company wide, which I think can work well. Some people can sustain that, like to Carrie's point about the capacity. A lot of people cannot. You get less effective, particularly if you're in a production type of environment as the day goes on.
Nice. I also think I saw this also in the chat as well, where there was a comment about it works best when we synchronize. So everybody has to take the same day if we're going to have 4-day work week. And I think this is where the AI tools could help, by understanding capacity, people's schedules. As a human, I could never have done that. But I do believe that AI could potentially help us find the right cadence for work, knowing what the work needs to be done and what people's preferences are. I think that's a more enlightened way to look at how AI can help us than just saying, oh, it's either going to remove things and we're going to have all this free time. I don't see that working. And a lot of the executives I know are not necessarily signing up for that. Or at the same time, being like, well, now we can just constantly just do more and more and more ad nauseum. No, there's
Yeah.
plenty of nauseum happening. Thank you very much. All right. So I'll move us on to this one because we have so many great predictions that I want to get to. This next one is that managers, this is the prediction, managers will shed half of their admin work thanks to AI, right? But the bottom third will be removed and automated completely out of the workforce altogether. So we're going to lose a third of our managers, even though the average manager is going to lose half of the administrative work that they did before. And my question about this is, let's start, Carrie, let me get you on this one. When you think about managers and in an increasingly digitized and highly technical world, I'm thinking about the human toll of removing a bunch of managers, et cetera. Like, how should I be thinking about what might happen next year if we continue to put downward pressure on management as far as their presence because we're automating so much of their jobs away?
Yeah, that worries me quite a bit because I do think the coaching and the developing and that's what people say, is typically missing if you're not coming into the office as an example, right? And those kinds of executive teams that say we really need to make sure that our people are getting exposure and coaching and development, and who's going to do that if we've removed so many of those managers? What I can see is the span of control certainly is going to be broader for a lot of managers, and they're going to
Mm.
hopefully be able to be more effective at spending more time coaching. That would be the hope. But in order to do that, we've got to really develop them to be great coaches. And a lot of managers, because they've been in the weeds being tactical and doing the job and being working managers, they don't have that sort of exposure or those durable skills quite yet. And so again, there's a shift that has to happen first. It's like, what do you need to do in order to enable this to happen? And we really need to kind of create a lab around how are we going to create that sort of um, humanized and very highly intelligent from an emotional intelligence perspective
Mhm.
management team that can grow those skills in others. Or I don't think it will work at all.
Yeah, Tracy, I'm not sure what you saw either with your deskless workers. It's not heavy industry, but basically you're talking about an industry is not necessarily known for being so touchy-feely. Can I just say that? So how do you see this? I want to get your take on how you see this playing out with managers getting rid of some of the admin stuff. That's great, but is it great if we get rid of the managers too?
Uh, well, break down the job of a manager, right? And this is different in every industry, every company, even. So break down the job of the manager into skills and what skills are needed and what skills are not, right? And so when you look at that, the job of a manager should be to lead their people, right? It should be to coach, to develop their people. That's a very human skill. And to Carrie's point, we're not quite there yet. We should be. And that's one of the things that we should be as people leaders, as if you're a consultant working with people, you should be heavily, heavily focusing on that. And that can look like it can look like a formal course, or it can look like walking along a warehouse floor and having a 2-minute conversation. It doesn't have to be something super formal, but start developing those skills now, because that middle management layer, whether we want to or not, if it's the right thing or not, that's going to look a lot different in the coming years.
I like that. Looks different. Sophie, what do you think?
Well, I think, we're in a transition period where, we've had organizations flattening in order to be more nimble, so like taking out the layers of hierarchy. And we're also having technology coming in, AI in particular, coming in specific skills. And therefore, that's actually making us focus on designing work, understanding how the work is done, what the tasks that AI can do, what the tasks that I can do, for example. Now, when we have more clarity, the idea, just as Tracy says, is that managers aren't actually focusing on providing that clarity on a daily basis, or kind of like you should be doing this or should be doing that. It actually ends up doing the coaching. So the more that we can get through this design period, having AI and technologies coming in when we've actually worked out exactly which pieces of the workflow it can do, then we'll get to a point where with the flat organizations, you have this greater span of control. As Carrie was saying. So I think, it's going to be a little bit messy, unfortunately, over the next couple of years at least, to get through that process of trying to understand the work, designing the work, having the greater span of control, which takes some training and more coaching, but that will be freeing up more time. So we've got a lot, a bunch of transition that we have to get through, but I do see that is going to be fruitful, and we'll have much more personalized skills. Which, yeah, the soft skills. My thing is all about empathy. So I really believe that with all the technology, we have this very human-centric talent piece of it that really needs to go hand in hand.
Yeah, I think when we saw the Menti poll and we saw this concerns about the rise of AI in terms of being prepared, and then at the same time the rise of burnout, et cetera. I think when we look at and say, well, AI is going to help us to eliminate all this admin stuff and all these entry-level jobs, and we're going to be so much more productive and efficient and profitable, et cetera. But then when we don't take in that human impact and the toll,
Right.
then all of a sudden, what have we really gained? It's actually could worsen some things. It takes a real long calculus to be able to understand how all these things fit together, which is exactly why we need our HR professionals to be in leadership positions to help us get it right, as opposed to just running spreadsheets and saying, wow, isn't this great? Like, it's not great. Actually, it's getting much, much worse. But Sophie, I want to keep you on the hot seat here for a second,
Okay.
because my next prediction here is that the job market is actually going to open up. Now, some people on the call are thinking, oh, good. And some people are thinking, oh, no, right? For a lot of different reasons. But the job market is going to open up. And the new perk at work is going to be trust. So that organizations with low psychological safety and trust, they could lose up to let's say a quarter of their people. So my question for you, Sophie, when you think about this, what are some of the trust builders and the trust destroyers in terms of organizational dynamics today?
Well, I think, transparency becomes absolutely key to helping people understand what is going on. For example, I mean, trust is very, very low. And, I'm not even sure that it was very, very high, because the trust used to kind of be in the organization when we had long, lifelong jobs. You trusted the organization to look after you. You didn't necessarily trust your manager. So I think maybe this is something we have to do for the first time. But if you're we had trust that was based on observation in offices. And now if we have a distributed workforce, we're now actually having to develop those trust-based relationships for the first time. So I think that empathy, connecting with people, those are the things that really help build trust and build community and build belonging. And so, really leaning into connecting with people. So relationship building, connectivity, those are the type of, and empathizing people are really, really important to build that trust and engage in those relationships. And, the monitoring, the surveillance, the micromanaging, all of those things are, really undermine trust because it's kind of like you're not listening to me, you're not asking me to contribute, you don't care what I think. And if you did ask me a question and then you don't follow up on it, okay, you really don't care what I think. So I think, surveys I think are important, listening to people, validating what they've said if you don't agree. Lots of things to do with empathy are really, really important.
Mm.
And again, that balance between talents and technology and really being human centric as we bring in all this technology and transparency is critical for that because there is so much fear, there is so much anxiety about, is my job going to still exist? And there was some interesting. I just wanted to quote the Doug, I forget his last name of Walmart, who was saying he's now actually just left, but he did say we have 2.1 million people. We know that AI is going to be disruptive. We want to try and
Mm.
keep the workforce at that level over the next 3 to 5 years. We may be deploying people differently, but we want to
Mhm.
try and keep them. So that kind of transparency can help people feel that at least, feel trust in the organization.
Right. Yeah. And Carrie, you had an event a couple weeks ago where I was honored to be a part of it too. But it was basically you pulled in a bunch of chief people officers together, and they were talking about culture. They're talking about trust. What are you seeing out there from your clients and beyond the conversations you're having around what's destroying trust, what's building trust today in organizations?
Well, certainly all of the layoffs that everybody are worried about, that's certainly destroying it. I also think the lack of clarity around the strategic plans and what roles are going to exist, I think is also having an implication. I think from a culture perspective, you've got a lot of people that are very burnt out and feel the weight of the world right now. And so if they can't rely on their leader for the type of support that they need, they're breaking that relationship with the employer. And what from a culture perspective, I think people not knowing how the culture is defined and what behaviors are
Mm.
appreciated and what aren't going to fly creates this foundation that gets broken from the beginning. And so I really think it's important for organizations to be crystal clear on what they do appreciate behaviorally and
Mm.
what is not going to be accepted in terms of
Mm.
behavior. And that could mean performance related, that could mean style, work style, that could mean, something that's more even skills based. But if we don't make that clear for them, then they're going to break the trust. I also think around expectation setting and creating clarity around the operating model that we're working within and what flexibility is permissible and what isn't. Like
Yeah.
we have to be just ahead of it all, and
Mhm.
that's what lets people know with assurance this is what is going to get me in trouble, right? This is so I don't have that fear and I don't do the job hug and I don't just hold on because I'm scared. And right
Mhm.
now
Yeah.
we have fear running rampant, and
Oh, yeah.
that is not promoting trust at all. Um, I'll also say just real quickly that from a trust builder perspective, I think it's not one-on-ones. I think people leverage one-on-ones thinking that that's just going to be the way that you build the relationship. And a lot of trust gets built in the informal channels and creating the connection as real one-to-one people, but not necessarily just in a formal one-on-one. And like
Mhm.
actually just checking on people and like the how are you? How are you really? Like what else is going on in your world? All that personalization really matters to people, especially because we're not getting it in other places other than the community of work.
Yeah,
Mm.
100%. Such a great point. And Tracy, I want to come back to something you said earlier. Like you, I have three Gen Z kids too, and they're skeptical. Boy, they've just been through some
Yeah.
stuff, entering the workforce now. And I just wonder if you're seeing something similar when it comes to trust or have you seen a change in the role of trust in your career, more recently?
Yeah, and I agree with everything that was said, and clarity and communication is so incredibly important. But as organizations, generally, some do, most don't trust their people. And how in the world can you expect your people to
Right.
trust you as an organization if you don't trust them, if you're monitoring their every move, if you don't lead with trust, right? And so, for our kids, at least what we see, they're their trust in their organization and their connectedness to the organization comes down to their manager.
Mhm.
Bottom line, that is number one far and away. And so if you have those people in those right seats, if you are, have those frontline managers trained or doing, doesn't have to be the one-on-ones. Yes, it's trust is built in those informal settings. If you do that right, you're going to go a long way toward building that trust.
Right.
Yeah, that's the one thing that we can all agree on. Neither side trusts the other. And you're like, wait a second, how do we get to this place? And in this life, you get what you give. And I think this is where trust does require you to be a little bit vulnerable. If you allow people to have freedoms at work, you might have a couple who, take advantage and they should be, moved out. And at the same time, I think that sometimes employers have to make decisions that aren't going to be popular. We have to be grown-ups about that. Sometimes they have to have a riff because there's market forces at play. And I think there's a level of discourse and maturity and understanding that needs to take place on both sides. And right now, I think it's not happening. So, yeah, it's scary stuff. I think I'm going to move us forward here and have one more question before I turn us over to the audience Q&A. And Sophie, this is one of the predictions that you had suggested as well.
Right.
And since we'll pick up on this one, a lot of the boring and easy work, like data inputting, a lot of that admin stuff we said earlier, is being automated away. I think that you point out that the work for the youngest new hires is going to be 3 to 4 years more advanced than the previous generations. It's almost like entry-level jobs almost don't exist anymore, per se. What are some of the ramifications of that when you're thinking about people on the call that are HR professionals, they're doing either talent acquisition, development, retention, succession planning, et cetera, knowing that we've seen a massive change for those entry-level workers?
Well, this is something that I'm very concerned about because this is something I actually highlighted first in 2019. There was an interesting Wall Street Journal article which said that the graduating class of May 2019 was going to do work at that time, which was 3 to 4 years more advanced than previous generations. So that was before AI came in and took away even more, ordered away even more of the easier stuff. So right now, I'm not sure exactly what the number is for the US, but I think it's very similar to the UK. But for an just graduated from college, entry-level job requires 2.7 years of experience in the UK. And again, I think it's very similar in the US. Well, it's not anybody's fault as the fact that these jobs are that much more advanced, that's the level of experience that somebody would be expected to have to do that job. But we need to close this gap because, obviously somebody's coming out of graduating from college can't have that experience. So we need some help from the education institutions and, longer onboarding. But I do really I'm very interested to see how people here who are attending here respond to what can be done to help close that gap, because the technologies are only going to be automating away more of the easy stuff. And so how can we bridge that gap? Because young people need to be able to get into those earlier jobs. They can upskill in different ways that they can. They can, do sort of MOOCs and stuff like that. But we still need to have a way for them to be bridging that gap. And, employers reaching down to help them close the gap. So that's something that I am concerned about. I have 2 Gen Z kids myself. One is in the workforce. One, has yet to go to college. But I worry for her and hope that we're going to be in a place. But in the meantime, in the next 2 to 3 years, what can be done to help, what are the different mechanisms that can be used, increasing internship pools during college, obviously reaching to high schools as well. So I look forward, anybody here who has some ideas.
It's a big burning question, isn't it? The question used to be, how do I climb the ladder? Now it's like, how do I get on the ladder? Like it's just a whole different situation. But Tracy, what do you think in terms of when you think about entry level in particular?
I work a lot, and we didn't talk about this much, but there's a movement, particularly with younger people, to move more into things like the trades, into construction, coming into because they're seeing, I'm coming out of school with $150,000 in debt, and what does that get me? I can't even get a job, right? And we've been extraordinarily lucky with our kids, and one's still in college. But one of the big things they had internships and they had part-time jobs. And so they got those skills, they made mistakes, they learned to have crappy
Hmm.
managers who didn't listen to them. They learned what happened when they were late. They learned what happened when they missed a day. And so that was great. And I think as organizations, we can, if we can offer internships or if we could partner with as early as middle school to give kids
Absolutely. Yeah.
career options to say, hey, look, we're asking kids who are 17 to decide what they want to do for the rest of their lives, which is ridiculous. And so, give kids options.
Yeah.
Our kids who are out of college both decided what they wanted to do because of that
Mm.
opportunity. So do that. Partner with your schools, even elementary schools. Just share what it's like to do what you do. And I think that that goes a long way.
Carrie, if you'd like, I'll give you the last word on the subject. What do you think about entry level in particular?
Yeah, I'm worried too. I think the internships is a big part of it and work experience. One thing that gave me a little hope, my daughter's in that 17-year-old range too, and she is going through the college application process. And one of the things they're weighting much heavier in those decisions is work experience. And so,
Right.
I think they're giving kids a lot more access to acceptance because now even getting into college is quite difficult
Mm.
if they've had true work experience. And so making sure that our kids are getting those internships, getting exposure earlier on to what
Right.
work is really like versus waiting until they graduate. I just don't think it's
Yeah.
serving them well.
And there are some college degrees now which have the last year is work experience, which I think is fantastic.
Yep.
It's just, this is a big problem, which is, around the world. And so thank you for letting me, I
Yeah.
was trying to share this because I am really concerned about it.
And
I
long-standing
agree.
institutions on all sides that need to evolve. And I think that's the
Yeah,
name of the game for
yeah.
all of us is saying there is no going back. There's no fix. There's only fluid. So, well, I tell you what, so we are going to begin the Q&A portion of the show. So again, if you have questions for our panelists, just use that Q&A button you see in Zoom. And while we're waiting for those last questions to come in, we are going to throw a link in the chat as well, recognizing that companies are using talent optimization to drive better business results and through better people performance and people practices. So this is a question from our sponsor of the show, Predictive Index. If you've got some interest in learning about the PI software platform, how you can enhance your talent optimization outcomes, or if you already know a little bit about PI and just want us to follow up with you, you can do that as well. So I'm going to come to the Q&A, and here we go. The first question comes to us from Nicole. This is just going to be an all play. You can tell me who'd like to weigh in on this one. By freelancing skills, so this goes back to our earlier conversation, are you suggesting that the relationship is no longer employee to employer or to contractor or business? So I think, Tracy, just as you had mentioned, a lot of folks are shifting to either fractional or freelance work, just saying that the appeal of having a W-2 traditional job comes at a cost. So, and now there might be a free market. Maybe you can just start us off by talking a little bit about that.
Yeah, and I'm not sure exactly where Nicole's going with this, but within an organization, we're going to be partnering with all kinds of people. You'll have W-2s, you'll have freelancers, you'll have contractors, you'll have AI agents, you'll have all kinds of things. And I think, as me, someone who stepped out of the corporate world on purpose to build a portfolio career for myself, I was 50 when I did that, 51 when I did that. I'm 53 now. We're going to see more and more of that, and we're not going to see that with just young people. So we have to think of work differently and think
Hmm.
of it in terms of skills. And can we get that from a W-2 person, or can we bring in a freelancer to do that particular thing? So that's how we have to shift our mindset to start thinking about how work gets done, because it won't be the same way.
Yeah, and I think there's benefits on both sides if we work together and get it right. So, Sophie, this next one's for you. It says, if this comes from Lori, and she says, if skills are the tangibles that employers look for, how do you envision the role of L&D changing? How do we build new skills or hone existing ones? So, how will learning and development help us really get good at skills?
Well, there's dramatic change with LLMD because of AI, and that is it's still in motion, obviously, but it really means you can have incredible personalized learning for people. Kind of like, how does Sophie learn? What are the best ways that she learns? Is it video? Is it text? Is it kind of like use Memrise and Duolingo for learning languages, that kind of thing. So I think there's some really, really interesting things to be done. It is complex, and one of the ways that AI can really help is mapping these nonlinear careers, right? So if we're all in a team, we all have different skills. We want to go in different directions. We want to, advance through the company. which can be horizontally and diagonally, as well as maybe, jump to another area completely. That's the internal skills market, the internal talent marketplace, for which you need to know skills in order to be able to do that. So there are a lot of different ways that this skills sort of marketplace and the focus on skills is really, really developing. And that 85% of companies already are doing skills-based hiring because it is much more effective and they do have a much, much better match with jobs. And that leads to longer tenure. So this is a huge shift in terms of, as I said earlier, sort of really focusing on, what are my top skills? Like, how do I actually know what my skills are and how to apply them and how best, within a team to be utilizing my skills differently. So, yeah, this is a major shift that, Laurie, we're all moving, understanding. Managers haven't been used to be dealing on a skills basic. It has been job. So this is a major shift, but it is and driven by technology. But I think ultimately it's going to be much better for all of us. Gallup has had this data for a long time that said, profits go up, I think, 14 or more percent when people are, employees are sort of oriented towards their skills and their strengths, and they understand that profits go up, engagement goes up.
Things get a lot better, don't they, when that happens? Yeah. Well, and Carrie, I want to flip the. Let's stay on skills for a second, but from Susan, she wants to know, how do you recommend that we as HR professionals clarify our skills? Since there's a difference between self-reporting, inference, validation, et cetera. You have such a great community of HR leaders. I think you're in a great position to talk to us about, like, what should we be thinking about in terms of HR professional skills too?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I think the role has completely shifted, as we all know. And one of the things that I think HR leaders are struggling with is the challenge to be everything that the business needs in the moment. And so to build the skills that you need, I think really thinking about people analytics and data is a huge part of that. I would say that looking at where you can build capacity and capability around workforce planning, all the things that actually you all brought up on the screen that are worrying you, those are all the things that are really worrying business too, right? That's where you've consumed that from. So those are all the things that we have to, as HR professionals, then flip the script on ourselves and say, like, how are we going to get good at these things? Because our confidence and competence around them is what will then, kind of spill into the organization. And so I'm not a big, I don't know if this is the right way to say this, but the HR business partner model is something that I think was a little bit overinflated in some ways. But the concept of knowing the business and really understanding, how does this business make money? What capabilities do we need to execute on our strategy? How am I going to take that strategy and transfer that into skills and capabilities that we need to build? And then how do I prove it with data? And if you kind of couple all of that together, then you've demonstrated the value that you can create. I also think there's a very interesting shift that I think we're going to talk a little bit about, is just the ethics around work and that trust building and the culture shaping and the things that need to happen around that, and being the architect of it versus, kind of the person in HR that is the execution only and waiting for those things to come to you as a directive, I think is the other big gap that I keep seeing. And so the more HR leaders sort of step into those areas, I think, Tracy mentioned, like, whether you're doing that fractionally or you're doing that as a head of HR, those are the things that are going to differentiate HR leaders going forward, I think.
I think it's so well said. And I know I feel that way too. Unless HR wins, our companies and our employees are going to lose. There's just no way around it in the future. Here's what I'm going to do. Rachel, can you please bring up the slides again? Because I want to share with our audience some of these fabulous guest promotions as well. So you're going to be receiving, just right in the chat, you'll get some LinkedIn links, for example, to connect with our panelists. But also we've got some in the follow-up materials you'll be getting after the webinar ends. When you get that follow-up set, you'll be getting some of these additional resources as well. So Carrie would like you to check out a resource from Living HR to help you as HR pros build the business cases that are going to win executive buy-in. So if we're going to see HR, if you're going to be able to get yourself into the investment agenda, Carrie's going to help you do that. And you're also going to see a link to join a LinkedIn group that you can connect with other chief people officers and CHROs as well. Sophie's got an opportunity to sign up for her newsletter, which is all about leadership and workforce insights, and check out her modern work courses and her executive sessions. So thanks for sharing that, Sophie. Tracy also has a newsletter for us with practical people-first insights around the future of work trends, leadership takeaways, and lessons you can use right away. I'm a subscriber. I get it. I love it. So please consider signing up for Tracy's newsletter. And for myself, I had a little bit of a fan moment in this. I do a lot of talks and speaking. I had a chance to sit down with Jamie Nolan. She's the CEO of the National Speakers Association, and she talked about how she navigated that organization from a post-pandemic turnaround, which was pretty exciting. So if you're into podcasts, I'd love it if you check out that one. All right, next slide, please. So we have a book giveaway. Our lucky book winner that we have for our giveaway today is Rachel Farber. Rachel, if you're still on, congratulations. Be shooting you out a copy of that book. That's great. And then next slide, we also have an ebook bundle for you. So it's the season of giving. So we thought we'd give you all the best insights that we could pull together from a variety of different topics that we've shared throughout the year. So there'll be a nice link for you to go and get that as well. You can see these colorful ebooks all around a variety of topics. So whether it's HR or AI in HR, or whether it's these CEO's most valuable player, that was a really fun one to work on as well. So hopefully you'll find something in there that you like. And then finally, for next month, what we're going to see is the perspectives topic, which is the tip sheet itself. So we have a tip sheet for you all about today, which is how to get yourself ready for what's coming next. So I saw some of the Menti polls that was about trying to understand what about some trends that are coming that we don't quite know how to get on top of. This tip sheet is going to help you do that. So hopefully you'll be able to download that, review it, and send it around, share it with your team, fill it out together. That's a great team building exercise for HR teams as well. So hopefully you enjoyed that tip sheet. And then finally, next month, we are going to be talking about employee engagement that actually works in 2026. So that's going to be on January 21st, Wednesday, same time as today, our normal slot. So it'll be on the other side of the holiday. So happy holidays to everybody. I hope you really enjoy the time. I want to thank our panelists for being here. Tracy, Sophie, Carrie, thank you so much for sharing your insights today. I hope you enjoyed those bold predictions, and that we all got a chance to learn from your insight and your wisdom and all your great experience. Thanks to our audience, of course, the most for investing in yourself by joining our webinar today. And thanks to the Predictive Index, sponsor of the show, for making talent optimization dreams come true. That's it for today, everybody. Please have a happy, safe, and restful holiday season. And we will look forward to seeing you in the new year. Bye, all.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.